go introduce herself, and we'll sort of work our way down.
Well, good morning. It's a real pleasure to be here this morning. I am I represent Senate District 36, which is the southern portion of Marion County and the northern portion of Johnson County. I recently joined the Senate, almost a year ago. I was caucused in to fill the vacancy of the late Senator Jack Sandlin.
My name is Julie McGuire. I'm a representative. I represent House District 93. I'm on the south side of Marion County as well, Perry Township. So from like F.U.E.L down to the Johnson County line, right in the middle is my district. And
we overlap.
Yes, city's my state senator.
Yeah.
Wow. My name is Renee Pack. I'm a state representative from House District 92. I represent Speedway, the glorious home of the IMS. I'm the first African American to do so in that district. I also represent portions of Pike Township, Wayne Township, and the town of Claremont. And I'm excited to be here this morning. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you for being here with us this morning. So we're going to talk a little bit this morning about the 2025 legislative session and what is coming down the pike. So maybe if each of you could talk to us a little bit about what you have planned as far as your legislative agenda and your district, and how what you've decided to file is going to impact your constituents. We'd sort of love to hear that. Maybe we'll start with you, Representative Peck, since I know we have to scoot a little bit early.
Sure. My legislation that we get 10 bills this year in the House of Representatives, and I've already got 3 military or veteran bills because I am a United States military veteran. I served in the United States full-time, 1986 to 1991, and I am a disabled vet also. So I have a lot of ideas and plans for what I would like to see for Indiana Hoosier veterans. We also have housing bills that we want to get passed. Our objective is to make sure that every Hoosier has a place to lay their head down every night. It's not a maybe, but we have to do this. We've got to help Hoosiers make sure they have somewhere to live and somewhere affordable to live. The numbers, and I'm not quite sure in the past few weeks what the numbers are, but we have an ungodly amount of people who are living in the streets. And I'm also a former retired educator, so those folks have kids with them. And we expect them to perform and do the same things as a kid with a home and 2 parents and all of that. And we've got kids out in the streets not knowing where they're going to sleep every night, and we expect them to score the same way that other kids score in testing and perform the same way. And so we've got to attack homelessness. It's a trickle effect. When we get kids in a secure environment, they perform better. When their parents aren't stressed out to the max, they perform better. And the reason I'm so passionate about this is because I lived homeless with my first 2 kids back in the 90s in the car, and I know the desperation of not knowing how you're going to feed your kids or how you're going to house them, how you're going to put a roof over their heads. So this is definitely a subject that I am very, very passionate about. I made it out, but many men and women aren't able to make it out. So that's the gulp of what I am pushing for this year.
I serve on the education committee. I'm hoping to have a seat on a public health committee next year, and I'm also on judiciary. So one of my passion areas, actually just yesterday, we had a committee hearing in judiciary about foster care in Indiana. Our numbers are not good. We need to do a much better job. So we were able to convene a lot of stakeholders together. We had the Supreme Court Justice, she serves on there. We had DCS, and we also had the courts representing what are new strategies to help improve permanency for kids in the foster care system. Public health is important to me. Indiana is like the 8th most expensive healthcare state in the country. And you all as business owners, I'm sure you're facing it, every day. My husband works for a small family run business. Their insurance prices went up 10% this year. That's just, it's just, this trajectory is unsustainable, and it keeps wages down in Indiana, right? Like, you can't afford to pay your employees more when, you have to balance the benefits. So I think that gets lost a lot on the discussion about wages in Indiana. So how can we continue to drive down costs? I have a few ideas I'm kind of working on, kind of fleshing out, and really kind of looking at the insurance side as well. How can patients leverage their ability to shop for their own services and make the insurance kind of help with that? And then education issues, passionate about that. I love we're working on the Indiana apprenticeship for high school students. And I think, that's a place all of you would maybe be interested in learning too. We want kids to 50% of Indiana students go to college. Of those 50%, only 40% graduate in 4 years, right? So yes, we need more kids going to higher ed, but then there's just going to be a large percentage. Even if we get that up by 10%, we need to make sure our kids find high school relevant so they don't drop out. And then so they have other opportunities to earn certifications, and they can do that through employers. So we are opening up this diploma because we want students to come to businesses like yours and get real experiences, learn, and be able to take those, moving on to maybe it's Ivy Tech certification, maybe it's higher ed, but how do we continue to move that ball? So passionate about that too.
Well, I want to set the stage about how my timing and how I came in, so you can give you some context about why I'm where I am at this point in advance of the legislative session. So I came in, I was sworn into the office in November of last year, and I was thrust into the first legislative session, which was a short session. And what I'm told is that it was a really, really, really quick, despite the fact that it felt very quick, but it was very short. It was very fast paced. And so I learned a lot. I authored a bill that passed unanimously through both chambers. And I'm glad I did that because it helped me get through an understanding of what the process of actually authoring a bill. And my hope is to be able to focus my legislative pieces coming up next session on the substance as opposed to having to worry about what the process is. Having said that, being in the Senate has been just so incredible for me because I love policy. And so when I think about what areas I want to file pieces of legislation, it's everything. I've got passion for everything. So I'm having to narrow down all of my ideas. But when I think about, okay, what's the job? The job is representing the constituents of your district. And what I'm hearing from the district what I'm hearing from the district is very clear need for property tax reform and relief. And
I'm sorry.
From the back.
Oh, my. Well, come on up to the second floor. I'm sorry, Cindy.
no problem.
That's Representative Bartlett.
Bartlett. He's probably going to do the same round that I did.
Right. You go ahead. I'm
Uh,
sorry.
So what I'm hearing from folks is that there's a real need for property tax relief. What that looks like is something that both chambers are very much interested in addressing. How do you provide relief to, folks who have invested in their homes and are now potentially facing being priced out of their homes, while at the same time I'm a proponent of looking at, okay, how are we spending those tax dollars so that we don't provide relief just for a small group and then we end up having to, like squeezing a balloon, you squeeze one side and then someone else has to ultimately make up the difference. So let's look at the issue holistically. That's one area I am very passionate about because I know that's what's important to folks in Senate District 36 and beyond. I mean, it's not just, in Senate
Anybody
District.
else on their property taxes like go up?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the 1, 2, 3 caps did not
Right.
stop that, which we did several years ago.
That's right. And what was interesting is I've been hearing from constituents who write in and they say, look, we planned for our retirement in this way so that we would be able to, own our home. And now it's just been, such a sharp increase in a dramatic way in such a short period of time that we never thought we'd be able to be, facing the potential of having to stay in our home or not. So super, super important issue that obviously has to be addressed. For me, reduction in crime and promotion of public safety is something that's big on my radar. I've got lots of ideas on how we can actually make substantive change. My goal is not to be reactionary and just kind of do, these dramatic changes, but instead the ideas that I'm kind of thinking through are looking at the entire system and the areas that affect, you know, public safety. And how do we make changes to make sure that we are creating a systemic change over the course of at least maybe 4 years that will result in increased public safety numbers. We're facing record shootings, record stabbings. Is it what are all the issues that are leading to these statistics, and start to think about how do we make adjustments all across the system so that we can start to make a difference. So more to come on that. I'm still trying to, you know, I kid in a candy store. Let's kind of measure myself. Education is also really important to me. My day job is to be I'm serve as Vice President General Counsel for the University of Indianapolis, and so I kind of bring the higher education perspective and, you know, modeling or partnering with the model of the state with apprenticeships. Sure, we want to get folks that are in your businesses the opportunities to be apprentices, but once they're there, you know, if there's opportunity for them to maybe gain a certificate by coming to the University of Indianapolis so that they can be even more productive members of your workforce is one of the areas that we're looking to. How do we look at higher education to couple that with some of the apprenticeship models? So we'll be looking to you all for that. I serve on the Environmental Committee, the Insurance and Financial Institutions Committee, and the Corrections and Criminal Law Committee.
Well, that was perfect timing.
You're the next question.
You're,
Second.
Do you talk loud?
Let me have a try again.
okay.
Wait, what's it?
Let's see. I just need to turn. Let's try that.
Justin.
Oh, no.
Oh, okay. Maybe it was me, sorry. It's me.
It's doing that.
Here. We're just talking.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Okay, good,
So
okay.
Representative Bartlett, I want to give you a chance to introduce yourself.
Okay.
And talk about your district. And then also if you can talk a little bit about the plans you have for session, what bills you're planning to file. And then we'll be off to the races.
Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is John Bartlett, House State Representative, House District 95. I serve on the Agriculture Committee, Labor and Government and Regulatory Reform. My district runs from 38th Street to parts of it goes up to 71st Street, Emerson on the west, all the way out to County Line Road, or Carroll Road on the east. My passion is chemicals that are in our foods and eradicating human trafficking. So, and I think that when I went into the Safe House, those are two things that were not talked about, but I think that they're extremely important. And my legislation this session is going to be, I want to introduce legislation on when there's a police action shooting, I want that policeman tested on the spot for drugs, alcohol. It lets the loved ones know that this was a policeman's decision, not a drug alcohol decision. And it also protects the police officer, because if there's a police action shooting, that policeman knows that, or if you have to go to court, that there were no drugs, alcohol involved. So it protects everybody. And I will have some human trafficking legislation this session. And is that enough?
Your time is leader of the military.
Oh, I had the fortune to write some legislation to create the Indiana Military Veterans Hall of Fame. There again, I don't think our veterans get a fair shake. So my dad was a veteran. My son's a veteran. My brother, oldest brothers, and my nephew. As a matter of fact, brag a little bit. My nephew retired from the Air Force, and he went to work for the Pentagon, and then he moved over to Homeland Security, and he got promoted to Deputy Director of Logistics in FEMA. and the director retired, so he's now the director of logistics for FEMA, and he's extremely busy right now because of the hurricane. But if he gets one more promotion, he'll report directly to the president of the United States. So yeah. And my oldest brother retired from the Marine Corps. Didn't retire. Was in the Marine Corps. Was in Vietnam. So take care of the veterans. And I'm the founder also of the Indiana Military Veterans Legislative Day, and I chaired that for 10 years. And I'm not a veteran, so I thought that 10 years is long enough because I think leadership can get stagnant after so long. And so my colleague here, Rep. Pack, is a veteran, and we turn it over to her. So it's an annual event at the State House every January.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that with us. What I would love to hear from each of you is something more broad than your own individual legislative agenda for 2025, but something that you see that's coming down the pike, whether it's from a potential new governor or from one of the caucuses or even from a lobbyist that you know that's coming. So before we were sitting down here, we were talking about the budget. We know there's a Medicaid situation that has to be rectified. Something that you see that's coming that's going to impact whether it's all of us because we're business owners, us as taxpayers, something that you think is coming that we maybe need to be aware of and kind of keep our eye on as we monitor the session in 2025.
Well, I'll
Please,
start.
yeah.
I touched a little bit on it as I started talking about property tax relief. That's definitely going to be on the agenda. I'll let the others who are veterans talk about kind of what it's like for a budget year. So as I'm preparing this to be my first budget year, I can tell you some of the topics across the board that I know are going to be big in terms of discussion that perhaps we haven't touched on yet. Roads and the road funding formula, that's going to be a big topic that has already started, even during the last session. I said I started in November. I think one of my first conversations was on road and road funding in preparation for this legislative session. So more to come on that. I think that is going to be a big topic of discussion, of course, interwoven with property taxes and how do we make up the whole pot of, ultimate tax dollars that fund everything else. I do think that me being on the Insurance and Financial Institutions Committee, last year that committee saw a lot of financial institution heavy legislation. This year, I do think that there's going to be more of an emphasis on insurance because healthcare costs and how that impacts our businesses. My role in the university, insurance is very big, and I oversee HR. So I'm very much in tune with the higher costs from an employer's standpoint, and not just from the hospital costs, but also the insurance costs and some of, how can we streamline some of those processes that insurance providers are, experiencing that, and how does that add to the cost of higher healthcare? So those are some areas that I think we'll definitely see.
Well, you hit the big ones. Again, kind of go back to healthcare, access to healthcare across the state of Indiana. We've had, I think, 10 maternity wards closed across the state in the last 3 years. I mean, women can't get to the hospital who are pregnant, that causes, or even to see a doctor. A lot of that is in rural areas, so we have a lot of consolidation in Indiana where big health systems are buying up not just hospitals, but they're buying up physician practices. Private equity is getting involved. Southside OBGYN, they're losing all private equity bought them, and all 4 OB doctors are not staying. And that's a problem on the south side of Indianapolis, and that's right here in a big city. So that just, again, it's continuing that ripple effect. How do we ensure access to healthcare for everyone across the state of Indiana? So again, I'm passionate about it, but I also think it's a big deal in Indiana.
I think that part of what we voted on 2 years ago when it came to Roe versus Wade has a lot to do with physicians, OBGYNs especially, staying here in the area or not. We set up a situation where they are not able to practice fully. They're not able to deliver the services that they were taught and spent years learning to do. And they aren't able to deliver those services because women do not have choices when it comes to their own health care. And so I think that's going to be something that we're going to have to continue the conversation about. We have to. We can't just cut it off right now. We've got young kids that are going to other states because they need health care that here in Indiana we have denied them. I also see housing as a tremendous um, hard issue for so many of us. And the thing with housing is so many of us can't relate. We can't relate to sleeping in your car overnight, because this apartment complex denied me. We can't even relate to kids who are having to wash up in hotel lobbies. And that's some of the problem with what we have going on in the Senate and the House of Representatives. You don't know. If you knew, so many people, I think, would vote differently on bills. So, again, we've got to get people housed. We've got to get veterans the services that they need, up to and including breaks on their property taxes. They deserve it. Only 3% of us in the whole United States answered the call to serve in the military. 3%. 3%. And I think that because of that, they deserve every single break they can possibly get when it comes to housing and property taxes. So with that, I'll step off my soapbox.
Let me say this. I think a lot of times we look at the effect, we don't look at the cause. And I think the legislature has been the cause in a lot of our issues. People don't pay attention. We don't read. We don't follow our legislators. We vote for them. We elect them. But when I have my town halls, I always tell my folk, I'm your employee. I work for you. If I don't hear from you, I don't know what you want. Okay. So I encourage you to contact me with any issue that you have, and let's talk about it. I do something that we call kitchen table conversation. Uh, if you call my office, and I like about 8 people there, it's 8 of you, there's 7 of your neighbors, and I come to your house and I bring our publications and I tell you what I do. But take about 5, 10 minutes to tell you what I do, but then I want to hear from you. Well, that's down. Like when I first started, a lot of folk would call and we do the kitchen table conversations. They enjoyed it, but that's down. But legislation should be done from data, not emotions, in my opinion. Okay. And we'll get a hot button item and we'll jump on it. But let's look at the data before we do legislation. The worst piece of legislation I've seen since I've been there are the 2 worst pieces. One was permitless gun carry. That was trash in my opinion, because I turned 18 years old. I can go to the gun store, purchase a gun, put on my side, walk down the street with a gun on my side.
No,
And psychiatrists and psychologists agree the human mind is not fully developed to age 25, 27, someplace in that range. So you got someone with an undeveloped mind, no discipline, walking around with a gun on the side. License to carry a gun, it at least lets you know who has it. It at least lets you know some background of this person. And now the policeman cannot even ask you, do you have a gun? At the end of the day, that policeman wants to go home as well. So that legislation, in my opinion, was some emotional legislation. Uh, House Bill 1005 in 2023, the rule says if you're on the House floor, you can vote yes or you can vote no, but you have to vote. Well, Deb, you can relate to this. I come out of Brightwood. So I protested that day. I decided I wasn't going to vote. So the speaker said, Representative Bartlett, would you like to vote? I said, no. House Bill 1005, when I first went into the legislature in 2007, if I was a home builder and a home builder bill came up, I would recuse myself. You had to fill out paperwork, but you recuse yourself. Now we got probably 25, 30 home builders in the legislature, in the House and the Senate both. They're authoring bills take them through the committee that they chair, and the chair of committee is pretty much going to get what that chair wants, because if you don't vote with that chair on his bills, your bill probably won't go either. But but then they bring it to the floor and they're voting on it. House Bill 1005 said, if I have some property and I want to put a subdivision here, if it's in the city limits, the city has to pay for it. If it's in the county limits, the county has to pay for the infrastructure, which means they'll pay for the streets, the sidewalks, the sewage, the piping, the electrical to that subdivision. And I refused to vote as a protest because I just knew it was wrong. And then afterwards, they were saying, "Well, John, it's city money or county money. Why are you so opposed? Cities and county don't have money; they have tax revenue. So when they run short, your taxes go up. You see what your property taxes did this last time? Because you're paying for an infrastructure. So all of us in here can't afford a $500,000, $750,000 home, okay? But you're paying for the infrastructure through your taxes, and I just think that's wrong. And I think that bill should be repealed. I think the Roe v. Wade should be repealed. I think that permitless gun carry should be repealed. And I think our citizens should start opening their mouths. Stop being silent, because when you're silent, you say you agree.
Thank you, Representative Bartlett, so that. Tracy,
all worked up.
Tracy's gonna stage a one-woman protest. So I want to pick up on something Representative Bartlett just said, which is his theme is getting involved with your legislator and having direct communication. And that's one of the things we're trying to provide for our members here by having you all here and other folks here. And so one thing I want you all to comment on is, how do you recommend for your constituents to communicate with you and interact with you and to advocate either for themselves or for their businesses when there is something either they're not sure about or they think, to Representative Bartlett's point, is wrong? What is because I can tell you from having been involved with NAWBO now for a couple of years, there's a lot of uncertainty when there's something that comes up. They feel unsure about reaching out to their elected officials. I don't know if they think you all are scary or you have fangs or horns or what they think, but there is a resistance on their part to reach out to all of you. So what reassurance or advice would you give to either these folks or folks who will watch your recording later about how to reach out to you and engage with you when there's something that they see happening in the legislature or in their government more broadly to promote change?
Well, I'll start by saying the one primary thing is we listen. I can tell you that I have had countless meetings with people who reach out, because that's when you're sitting in the chair, and I'm speaking as kind of just fresh right off of this legislative session. This was my first session, and I'm sitting there and I'm faced with a red and a green button, and you've got to vote for one way or the other. And so the input from folks, especially in my district, on topics, as you know, there's a lot of legislation that is filed covering a lot of different areas. And so it's not a Cindy decides one way or the other. As Representative Bartlett said, we work for the people. And so in order for us to be able to make those decisions when we're faced with that red or green button, we have to know, one, how these pieces of legislation will ultimately play out. And what I've talked to with people, particularly business owners, that different pieces of legislation will touch, they may not seem, I can't tell you how many times I've heard folks say, this is just a very simple piece of legislation. It's very simple. It's easy.
It's always simple.
It's always simple. It's very easy. It's very easy.
All it's doing is.
All it's doing. Yes, that's right. But I'm a lawyer by trade, and I know that a comma in the wrong place, or an and or an or makes
shall.
or shall or may, huge difference. And so for me, I'll speak for myself, hearing from you all about how that comma change, how that and or is actually going to play out in a real way for your business, That is so incredibly important. And we don't know that. I mean, we all have different backgrounds, we all have our, different areas of expertise. But if this piece of legislation is going to ultimately affect you and your business in one way, shape, or form, we need to hear that, how it plays out. The volume is great, especially this, longer session. So you guys kind of making sure that you're following, that you see this, or you hear about a piece of legislation, you start looking at it, you're like, ooh, this is going to negatively impact. Don't be shy about calling or emailing or somehow contacting, ask for a meeting. Like I said, I will meet with anyone and everyone to the extent that obviously the schedule allows, but that is important and invaluable information.
I don't get a lot of constituent. I don't know if it's because I'm in Marion County, people maybe just are figuring things out themselves, or there's closer resources than maybe in another area. But I don't get a lot of like specific, I'll get form letters, I get lots of form letters, like a group has mobilized on an issue maybe. But so whenever I get email from a constituent, I love to reply to them. And I really just prefer calling them back. It's so much easier to have a conversation. Usually it's a pretty complex issue. So if they don't include their phone number, I ask my assistant, okay, let's find their phone number. It's easier to call them back. So I've had probably 3 or 4 conversations just in the last 2 months. Yeah, so it's so much easier to do that. So I prefer a phone call or a direct email specifically for you over the form emails. So yeah, I'm always happy to talk to people because I don't get a lot. I spent 15 years working at my church as a business manager. And so every day with the tiny little staff, so every day my job was everyone came to the door asking for help and assistance. And so I love to get to connect people with resources. So oftentimes maybe there's an issue with FSSA or whatever it could be. I love to find the right person for you to talk to or to connect with. That's, I feel like a big part of our job is to be that central hub for our constituents, because there's a lot of agencies and there's a lot of people and it can be overwhelming. So
I think that for, did I jump?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I think that, or I know that in my district, before I even got into the political arena, I knew my neighbors. I'd served, as an educator for almost 20 years. And my kids, I have 4 kids who all graduated from Wayne Township schools, Ben Davis. So I know my folks. They call, they write. I make it a priority. Constituents love when they write in and the next day you get a phone call from your state rep or from your representative. That's first. And I tell my legislative assistant, my constituent letters and requests come first, because without them, we wouldn't be in the job that we have right now. And so I just think it's good policy to reach out to constituents that call or email, reach out as soon as possible. I love calling them up as soon as I get the letter. And again, we're servants, we are employed by the folks that vote for us, so they should come first.
For me, and I tell my constituents all the time, if you got a problem, call me. My cell number's on everything I put out. My business card, my pens I hand out, whatever, my cell number's on it. And I even get, I'm working on a case now from some guys in prison. I don't know who he is, but it said in his letter, he said, I was told if I want to get this fixed, contact you. And it, as I understand it, the West.F.U.E.L prison, there are 88 inmates, and they have 3 working toilets, 4 working sinks, and 1 shower with black mold in the shower. So we're working on that. And I don't know how they got my name, but to NAWBO, if you would give me $20 and ask me to go downstairs and get you something to eat, tell me what you want, and I come back with a dinner for me, nothing for you, how would you feel? Well, understand your tax dollar pays for everything in government, everything. My salary, these salaries, the facility itself, your tax dollar pays for that. So when you spend your money and it's used contrary to what you want it used for, then you're going to speak up. Okay. It's the same with your tax dollar. So I don't care how uppity that state rep or that state senator is, or that governor is, that's your employee. They work for you. They work for you, and your dollar pays their salary. So you have a voice. So if I've got a vehicle that I took it to shop, I'm not happy with what I got back, and it's a friend of mine, but we're gonna have a conversation, okay? So, because I paid to get this right, okay, and it's not right, and so that's what you have to feel about your legislators. This is not right. What we need to do to fix it? How we make it right?
Can I
It
add?
starts at the poll. I mean, you got to get to the polls. You have to have your family members and friends get to the polls. And I'm not talking about a Republican or Democratic vote. I'm talking about what's right for citizens of the state of Indiana. That's what matters, is what you feel as an individual is the right thing to do. What has been your experience? What do you know? How should you vote? And I think that we can make a difference, even in a red state like Indiana. We can certainly make a difference for not only our small business and large business owners. I'm a small business owner myself, but also to other Hoosiers who are looking for right answers that fit their lives, that fit their children's lives, and fit their legacies.
The one thing I wanted to add that goes along with what Representative Peck was saying is that there's a lot of apathy, not just when it comes to contacting your legislators, but also in terms of voting and the difference and the impact that we believe one individual can make. And one person can make the difference. And think about it collectively. If we all in this room decide that we can't individually make a difference, and so we're not going to contact people, we're not going to go vote, that starts to really make an impact. So that ripple effect of people thinking that my voice doesn't matter. Think about it. That might just be you, but collectively, that starts to become the actual, um, you know, rhetoric, if you will. And that's not what we want. So yes, every single person can make a difference. Every conversation, every contact to your legislator matters.
Sean, lady, you're at a question.
Doesn't know what they know, right? And every year in every session, there are so many things that are added to things that you author. And the public doesn't know that because it might be a healthcare bill, but then there's something transportation snuck into the bottom or whatever. So from a public's perspective, from a transparency perspective, how are they supposed to know what's really going on? Nobody's gonna sit down and read for every single bill that's in session every single year. So how are they supposed to know what's going on and how they can actually affect them?
They've got to know the bills.
Well,
Every day that we are in session is televised. You can listen. If there's a certain subject that you're interested in, you can go to the website and see what kind of legislation, fits you and what you want and what you want to see done. So we do have to take responsibility for being in the know and for knowing the news and for knowing what's happening. And I can't teach anybody that. I can get on my Facebook page or my other social media outlets and give brief little snippets of what's happening. But to get the full picture, it is our responsibility to read and to watch and to learn for ourselves.
so there's a lot of resources. Obviously, as Representative Peck said, everything is televised, the committee hearings. Navigating the website is, it in of itself is a task. There, but there are, there are organizations out there that are going to be putting out information. NAWBO, I'm sure, has, reports, and there's, legislative priority where they themselves pull out the bills. I know with the, attorneys, the State Bar Association puts out to the members, here are the bills that touch the legal field or legal areas that are of interest. So, certainly NAWBO is going to be a resource, but any other associations that might be, affiliated or interested in an area that you're going to be interested in, that's also a resource where they start to kind of pull out some of those or tease out some of the more relevant bills, because there's a lot. And
Yeah.
again, the newbie telling you here,
Yeah.
it's a lot.
Like example in the F.U.E.L, I know Natalie Robinson, she's their advocate, you know, so her job at the State House is to keep track of everything. If something's going in that shouldn't be, or doesn't protect independent businesses, she's going to those legislators and ringing the bell on that. So that's how we know, is those membership groups that you're involved in, they do a really good job at staying on top of stuff, trying to advocate for you as a member of the organization. But as you as an individual, again, maybe if it's the Audubon Society, you know, like things that they're interested in, you'd want to be engaged with that group on their mailing list, and they put out those alerts. So from a big space, you know, you as a person, be hard for you to track. Heck, we don't even know what's happening at the end, because you got 80 bills and there's 3 days to go, and things are just flying all over the place. So that's part of the process.
That's another point when, you know, talking about how to interact with legislators. Find those organizations that are interested in those areas that are of interest to you, because that is another avenue, in addition to you having those one-on-one interactions, where those organizations are going to be watching for those bills that are going to be of interest to you, and they are and have established relationships with lots of legislators. So that's even another avenue. Sorry to go back to the other question.
Oh, please.
Let me say this too. And Representative Pack brought this up, voting. You got 2 reasons to vote. If you think I'm a great legislator and you live in my district, then you need to go and keep me in office. But the other side of that is, if you don't think I'm doing a good job, you need to be at the polls to vote me out of office, to vote for my opponent. Okay. Now, a lot of people don't like me to say that, but that's the long and the short of it. Because if my work is not beneficial to you as a citizen, why do you leave me in office? Because I was there last time? It's not a good reason. If you go to a doctor and you keep getting worse and worse and worse, you change doctors. Okay. But if you got a doctor that I go to him, and I mean, he takes the time, explains to me, and when I leave, my problem solved. I want to keep that doctor.
We would never vote you out of office. We have one more question. We're gonna let Julie finish home on. Go for it.
And please jump in, but our advocacy committee here at NAWBO is that resource for all of you. Please be interested in joining the committee, tune into the committee. At NAWBO National, we have monthly calls for our membership. That's a little bit more on the federal focus. But as far as our local committee, we're watching legislation. We're working with other coalitions and trying to go coalitions. I'm watching some of the issues that may affect our women business owners during the session. So I invite you to tune in, watch your email, Leslie.
Yep.
Feel free.
I want to join.
You're
Can I join? And my daughter is a very successful bookseller at Loudmouth Books on East 16th Street, Leah Johnson. And she is a very successful author also.
So she should join too.
And she should join.
Wonderful.
So we're talking about communication and how fast the session moves and so forth. And just a little bit of my background. I've been around in politics in many different forms of fashion, as well as in government, and as an employee, and for 30+ years. So here's what I would like to ask all of you, because you are the all-stars. You talk about the kitchen conversation. I love that idea.
Yeah.
Call me, write me, do all those things. Heard that for so long. I will say this without my NAWBO hat on my behalf. I would like us to have a conversation about how we can rebuild trust, because I think that is the ultimate foundation that has eroded between all of us and all of you as elected officials at every level, right? So how do we rebuild that through better communication and transparency? Because it has remained the same for so many years. We tell folks, I've done it, I've encouraged people, but I've also been one of those people, even though without experience, who've never gotten a return phone call, never gotten a return email, repeatedly wanted to introduce myself and my business.
Unacceptable.
Nothing coming back at me whatsoever.
Unacceptable. If you have a Well, if you had one outreach and you didn't call back, get a call back or email back, that is unacceptable.
Wonder, and want to have.
Yeah. It's at the voting booth.
Build those conversations to solutions.
Sure.
Things, challenges and see the problems.
Sure. It's at the voting booth.
Lem-
You keep voting in the same people, or not you, but we keep voting in the same people who don't really care, don't reach back out to us, don't send us an email back, but we vote yes, or we vote for them when it's time in November. And that doesn't make any sense. We've got to get those folks out. And if you have reached out to someone and they don't reach back out to you, I'd go to my the leader of our party, because that's not right. You all are the ones that employ us. So that's very disheartening to hear.
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, I certainly can't speak for others, but I'll speak for myself. I think building trust in general is about presence for the good and the bad. Sometimes I've had very tough conversations, but it's about having those conversations that starts to slowly build that trust. Responding is number one, right? That's critical. But second is being present in all circumstances, and then just continually to, show up and be present at events like this or at other events, so that people know that it's not just this, us versus them. We are approachable, number one. Number two, it goes from our perspective, we've got to be responsive and respond, right?
Yeah.
It's going to take time. Trust, as you know, in every aspect of our lives is built over time. It's not something that you gain from one day to the other. And at least from my perspective, trust is very precious. And so the minute that it's broken, then that's really tough. But my ask personally is to say, look at the individuals rather than categorizing and then shutting down and letting that apathy say, I'm not going to make a difference there. Keep trying, because individuals are different. And I just don't want that apathy to seep into your willingness to contact us or to go to the voting booths to be participatory, because it does matter.
Thank you for that.
Yeah,
I'm so
yeah,
sorry to
yeah,
cut off.
time,
but
yeah.
We have run over 15 minutes,
Yeah.
which is lunch, so.
Yeah.
We don't mean the way of lunch.
Thank you so much. to
Thank
all
you.
of for being
Thanks for having us.